Hello, and welcome to today's NinjaTrader charting webinar. My name is Zachary, and I am a platform support representative for NinjaTrader. Today's webinar is interactive, so if you'd like to ask questions during the presentation, please open the chat window. You can open the chat by moving your mouse to the bottom of the Zoom window and pressing the chat icon. Once you have the chat window enabled, I'd like to test for audio and video, so if you can hear my voice and see the projection on your screen, please enter the letter Y into the chat window now. All right, thank you all for confirming that for me. And I do also have a quick disclaimer to read about the risks of trading. It's important to understand that there are substantial risks in trading commodity futures contracts or foreign currency. You should carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you, and this will depend on your specific circumstances and financial resources. It's possible to lose all the funds deposited with your broker and could even incur losses beyond these amounts. Please inquire at brokerage.support@ninjatrader.com for more information or for a copy of the CFTC full risk disclosure. Also, please remember that these training webinars are not a solicitation nor recommendation, but simply educational in nature. In today's charting webinar event, we'll take an in-depth look at how to visualize your favorite markets and find trading opportunities with NinjaTrader's over 100 pre-built indicators. Today's webinar will cover how to create a chart, working with data series parameters, how to apply indicators to a chart, working with drawing objects using window tabs, how to execute and manage trades directly from your chart using NinjaTrader, how to save your chart settings as a template and also as a workspace. And all of the features that we are going to demonstrate today are available with our free platform demo. So if you've not done so already, I would invite you to download NinjaTrader and also request a free live market data trial using the link that I'm posting into the room now. And bear with me a moment while I grab that link for you. All right, to begin, I'm going to get switched over to my desktop presentation, so bear with me a moment while I do that as well. All right. Now, to begin, we're going to create a chart, but before we create a chart, we need to connect to a market data feed to be able to receive data on that chart. If you're just getting started, you can request a demo account for futures or Forex trading with that link that I had previously provided into the room. You may also use the free Kinetic end of day feed, but just be aware that this will only allow you to create charts on a daily interval or greater, and so you will not receive real-time data with that feed. I'm going to go ahead and just establish my connection to Kinetic since I've already created that connection. And to do that, I'm going to go to my control center, select the connections menu, and then select my preferred connection. Once connected, you'll see a green indicator in the lower left-hand corner of the control center. And if I hover my mouse over the top of that, it'll let me know that I am connected and which connection I'm connected to. Now to create a chart, I'm gonna, from the control center, select my new menu and select the chart menu option. Once selected, this will open up the data series window. This is where I'm gonna control the data that comes into that chart, such as the instrument and the different intervals. So to begin, I'm just gonna open up a chart for an E-mini S&P 500. If I know the full instrument symbol, I can just type it directly into the instrument field. But if I'm not sure maybe what the expiry is or of what the symbol is in full, then I can also go through and search by just beginning to enter portions of the symbol. And you'll see here, I've got my E-mini S&P 500 futures, and I'll double click on that to add it to the data series window. Now you'll see there's a bunch of properties and parameters on the right-hand side, and we'll cover those in a bit more depth in a moment. But I did just want to open it with the defaults to begin with so that you can follow along easily and also so that you can get a feel for what a candlestick chart is going to look like within NinjaTrader. So once I've entered my data series, I'll select OK. And now you'll see that I have a 1-minute ES 0321 chart What that means is each one of these candlesticks represents 1 minute of price action. If I hover my mouse over the top of each candle, I can view those specific data points for each of these candlesticks by using the mini data box. To access the mini data box from a chart, I'm just going to hold down my middle mouse button or scroll wheel. Let me just move my mouse to a little bit more of a clear position so you can see that. So you'll see it's got the date, the time with the timestamp at the end of the bar. So this particular bar would contain all of the information from 9:40 to 9:40:59. You've got your open, high, low, close, as well as the volume displayed here. And again, that's just a middle mouse click to view that mini data box. You could also keep a static data box on your screen at all times if you so choose. And to do that, you're just going to use your chart toolbar to open up the data box. And you can tell which one of these is the data box menu item by hovering your mouse over the top. You'll see it says show data box, left click to open that up. And I'm sorry, that opened on my other screen here. So let me just drag it into place. You'll see now I have that permanently fixed on my screen, just in case I always wanted to have that open. Now, so directly from the chart window, we're not committed to this instrument or this interval if we don't want to be. So from directly over the top of the chart, we can make several changes with just a few keystrokes. The first I'm going to demonstrate for you is how to change the interval. So let's say I don't want my 1 minute candlesticks anymore, and I want to see what 15-minute candlesticks of price action look like for my analysis. To make that change, I can do so in a couple of different ways. The first and most obvious would be to use the interval selector. So that's going to be this option up at the top of my chart, second from leftmost menu item here. You'll see it says 1 minute currently. If I left click on this field, I have a user configurable list of different intervals that I can select with a couple of clicks. So for instance, if I wanted a 15-minute chart, I would just left click the 15 next to the menu column. And you'll see now I have different candlesticks, and that's because each one of these candles contains 15 minutes of price action. Looks a little bit different. And you'll see that those values would be for any 15-minute interval there. Now, if you're more of a keyboard wizard than you are a mouse user, not to worry, you can switch intervals from a chart just as easily with a couple of keystrokes. So for instance, if I wanted to switch my 15-minute chart to, let's go for a tick-based chart. So let's say a 7 Renko chart, just so we can get an idea of some price movement without all this noise. To begin opening a different interval with keystrokes, I'm just going to directly start typing over the top of the chart. I'm going to put in my value first, and then the shorthand for my interval. So when it comes to Renko, I'm going to enter in 7 because I would like a 7 Renko chart. And then I'll enter in the short key for Renko, which is just going to be a capital R. Make sure to not put any spaces there. And once I hit enter, it's going to begin to open my 7 Renko chart. And I accidentally opened a range chart. I forgot to put RE rather than just an R. So I can still use this as the same example, however. So you'll see now I have a 7 range chart. And to show it off one more time, I will open a Renko chart as well. So remember to just put your interval value first, and then the shorthand for that interval. Hit enter, and now you'll see I have my 7 Renko chart. And this would work with all interval types. If you ever want to see what the shorthand for those is, it'd be available in our help guide. But it's almost always just going to be an abbreviation of what the name of the interval is. So for instance, with 1 minute, I would just enter 1 and then a capital M and hit enter, and I'm back to my 1 minute chart. Similarly to how I can change the interval directly over the top of the chart, I can also change the instrument. So I don't have to fully commit to ES0321 if I don't want to stick with that and maybe want to trade a different product, or maybe I want to get an idea of the micro variant of this same underlying security. To change the instrument, it's going to be a very similar process. So we'll select the leftmost menu up from our chart toolbar, and this is going to open up our instrument selector. You'll see our most recent instruments all the way at the top here, and then all of our different instrument lists. You can also just type directly within this field. So if I knew, if I wanted to open the micro variant of the ES, I would just enter in the symbol MES. And once it's located, I can double click to add it onto my chart. You'll see the chart looks very similar, and that's because they're based on the same underlying security, but they do trade at different price points. So some people prefer the micro and some people prefer the mini. And then the final way that we can change our instruments is just as we had changed the interval by using keystrokes, we can also do that with the instrument by just typing the instrument symbol directly over the chart. So for instance, I can change back to my ES chart from my MES chart by just starting to type the full instrument symbol here and selecting enter. Another interesting thing that you can do with keystrokes is adding additional data series. So you can view a couple of different markets at the same time. To do that, you are just going to use the plus sign, and then you would type in your instrument symbol. So once I have that plus sign entered in there, if I wanted to maybe input a tick index, I would make sure to put in the correct symbology for the tick index, which would be a little caret and then TICK. Hit enter. And now I have two panels. My top panel has stayed on the ES 0321 contract 1 minute chart. And then my lower panel contains my tick index. And if we'd like to remove that tick index, we can select it with a single left click. We can tell that it's selected by these black anchor points that appear on the data series. And once it's selected, we can right click and select remove. And now we're back to our basic ES 0321 1 minute chart. Now there are a wider variety of changes that can be made to this chart and customizations that can be made to this chart. And we are going to do the rest of these through the data series window. To access the data series window, we can select the data series icon from our chart toolbar, which would be the most immediately visual option. If I hover my mouse over the top, you'll see it is the fourth from rightmost icon. I can also open the data series window by right-clicking on the chart background and selecting data series from the context menu, or using the hotkeys Control F. Now you'll notice this data series window is the same window that we were accessing when we first built the chart, and it can be opened at any time with any of those three methods that I had mentioned. And to dive into these properties here, we're just going to go in order. I may not cover all of the properties, as some of them are a little bit more obscure or just a matter of customization and preference. For any of those that I don't discuss in the presentation today, if you want more information, hitting the F1 key at any time with any window open will open our help guide to that relevant section. So then you can find that information for yourself. Now, the first section here is the data series section, and this is going to determine the interval and what data is building this chart. So currently, the price based on setting is set to last, which means the last traded price is what is driving our price data. Now, for someone that maybe isn't going to use the last traded price for their strategy or is trying to do some analysis based off of some different metrics, we've also included two other options. You can build your chart based off of the ask and also the bid price. The type is going to be the interval type. So we've discussed this pretty fully at this point, but you do have some additional options from within the data series window. You have some tick-based options like tick charts, volume charts. You have some time-based options like minute charts. day charts, monthly charts, and then you've got some other popular options like Heikin-Ashi bars, Renko bars, point and figure charts. And if you're an Order Flow Plus user, this is where you would access your volumetric bars. The value setting is going to be what value that interval is. So with a value of 1 and minutes selected, I would have a 1-minute chart. The next section is our time frame section. This is going to determine how much data is loaded on our chart. The first property is the load data based on, and this is going to determine if you want to load your data based on days, based on a specific number of bars, or based on a range of dates. The default setting is days, so this would just be 5 days back from the end date that I have set. I also have the custom range option where I can set a start and end date. This is great for viewing historical data. And then I have the load data based on bars property. This is going to give me tight control over how many bars are specifically loading on the chart. So if you need a specific number of bars for indicator values or a strategy, or if you have a historical data provider that restricts your data access during the day, you can put in just a solid number of bars here, and regardless of the time, or regardless of the interval, it's going to load that number of bars. So if I had it set to 50, I would load up 50 1-minute bars, basically a little under an hour of price action here. And then these final properties under here, the days to load would be the number of days back from my end date. The end date is going to be the most current date that I'm seeing on the chart. So with it set to 12:15, I'm viewing my live data. If I wanted to just view a historical chart, then I could change this to a variety of dates by just using the date selector here. I won't dive too deeply into the trading hours property, but it essentially acts as a filter and filters out any information that's not coming in during the trading hours template that you have set up. By default, it's going to use the instrument settings, which is based off of the CME hours for this respective instrument. But you can also go in here and change this. You know, if you wanted to view 24/7 data, you've got your default 24/7 option. And there's also a wide variety of pre-built trading hours templates, as well as any custom ones that you would create here. But if you're unsure what that is, the use instrument setting is your safest bet. It's going to use the ETH information. So the next section we're going to dive into is a mostly visual section. And I won't get into the color selectors too much, but I did want to go in a little bit more depth about the chart style. This is going to determine what style of chart comes up. So it's a little bit different than the interval, because it's going to visually change how the chart looks. So currently, and the default is candlestick. You also have a variety of different options, and I'm just going to pull my data series window over a little bit so I can change these options and you guys can get an idea of what those would look like. So for instance, we've got a line on close chart. And if I were to apply that, instead of having candlesticks with the open, high, low, close, it's just going to have the close value drawing a line for me. Another popular option would be the open, high, lows, close bar. This is very similar to candlesticks, but you've got a little tick at the open and the close of the bar. So some people prefer that visually so that they can just at a glance get a quick idea of what those values would be. And then there are also some other options here. Some of them are specific to the interval that you have selected, such as the point and figure option. Then you have some interesting options like the equivolume chart, which is going to be a candlestick chart that changes the width of each candlestick based on the volume of that bar. The rest of the properties under this chart style section are purely visual, and you would change them based on your preferences. To change any of these colors, it would be like any other selector. You would just left click on it and you would see a wide variety of options here. So you can change the color of your down bars and your up bars, as well as the outline of candlesticks. If you were using a line on close chart, for instance, you could change the color and width of the line. Purely visual and all up to your personal preference. And that's similar to the visual section. The only property I really wanted to cover under this visual section in much depth would be this panel property. And that's just something that comes into play when you have multiple panels open with different data series and indicators. That will just determine which panel the data series you have selected will appear in. And finally, we've got our trade section. This is going to determine the colors of the plotting for your trade executions. And you can also choose to turn these on or off or limit the way that they look with this plot executions property. So by default, it's set to text and marker. So it's going to draw some text and place a marker on the chart for my entries and exits. If I select this menu, then you see I also have the options to not plot my executions or to plot markers only. The markers only would be kind of a middle of the line option where you can still get an idea of your entries and exits, but it's not going to put a bunch of text on the chart. For some people who like a nice clean chart, that might be a better option. And that about does it for what we're going to cover in the data series window. As I mentioned, if you have questions about any of the rest of those options, feel free to ask those in our Q&A section at the end, or you can also just open up our help guide by pressing the F1 key on your keyboard and locating that information there. So from the same right-click context menu that I was using to access the data series window, you might have seen another option, and that is the indicators window. This is how we're going to add our indicators to the charts. You'll also notice that just like the data series window, there are multiple ways to open up the indicators window. I can just select it from the right-click context menu. I could use the hotkey Control-I. Or I can also select the indicators icon from my chart toolbar. That's going to be the third from rightmost. Now, for the purposes of today's webinar, I'm just going to add MACD indicator. That's a moving average convergence divergence. That would give us an idea of the strength of our bearish and bullish movements. And it's just something that's very visual. So I'll be using that for today's presentation. All of the indicators in this menu under the available section are in an alphabetical order. So for the MACD indicator, I would go down to the M section. And you'll see it right there in the menu, MACD. If I'm unsure ever of what an indicator does, I can choose this information option here. And let me just kind of circle that with my mouse. It's a little italicized I. If I left click on that, it's going to open up the description of that indicator. It can be really helpful if I'm trying to get acquainted with some new indicators. Now to add my indicator to the chart, I'm going to want to add it to the configured section. So with it selected, I can either choose the add button, or if I wanted to, I could just double click on here and it will achieve the same ends. Once I have it in my configured section, I can then edit the properties of this indicator to my personal preferences. And it's going to, as the default, it's going to put in the most commonly used values here. But you could also change these to different values for your moving averages if you wanted to, or for each respective indicator, there are going to be different values that you can play with and decide what works best for you. You could also change the input series of the indicator. This would be particularly important if you had multiple input data series on here. So let's say I had an ES chart and an M&Q chart at the same time. If I wanted to change that input series that's driving my MACD, I can select Edit Input. And my secondary data series would appear here at the bottom. I can also use indicators as an input for other indicators. I wouldn't find that to be particularly useful with my MACD in this situation. But that is an option out there and allows for a really great degree of customization of indicators. The setup section will be kind of some general setup items for how this indicator functions. This is going to have a big impact on how that indicator performs on your computer, how often it's calculating. By default, most indicators would be set to calculate on bar close. This is the most resource-friendly option. It's going to calculate the value of your indicator on the close of each bar. But you also do have other options that will provide you with a live value, just in case you don't want your indicator to run behind by a bar. So on each tick is going to be a truly real-time value. It'll recalculate the indicator with each incoming tick. The warning that I have about this is it is pretty CPU intensive, especially once you get several indicators running. So just make sure that your PC hardware can handle running this option, or if you're unsure, keep your indicators fairly light until you've tested it and seen exactly how much work your PC can do at one time. And then you also have a middle ground option called on price change. This will provide you with essentially a live value, but it'll only recalculate once the price changes. I like any of these options, but if I want a live value, I personally am going to use the on price change option just because it's a safe bet. On each tick, as I mentioned, would be the truly real-time value, and some indicators will require that. The rest of the properties are basically just down to preference and visualization. So just like with any other of the windows that we've gone over, if you want to change the colors, you can do that by just expanding each of these sections. You can change which panel this sits in. So you can have it overlay in the same panel as the input series. With the MACD specifically, I want to set it in a new panel just so that it doesn't skew the look of my chart. And once I'm done setting these properties to my preference, I can select Apply and OK. And once I've applied, you'll see a second panel has opened up that contains my MACD indicator. Now I can change the panel that this indicator sits in on the fly. To do that, I'm going to add an additional data series just so I'm working with 3 panels. That's really going to highlight and demonstrate the functionality I'm about to show. So I'll just add a VIX index. Now you'll see I've got 3 panels here, one containing my MACD, one containing my ESO 321, and one containing my VIX index. If I want to change the order that these are resting in, I can either use that panel property that I showed you from the indicators and data series window, or I can change it pretty quickly on the fly with a couple of mouse clicks. For instance, if I wanted to move my MACD to the lowest panel, I'm going to select it with a left click. And you'll see anchor points appear on this just as they do if I were to select a data series. I'm then going to want to left click and drag. And once I see this blue area come up, I'm going to release the mouse button, and you'll see it drops the MACD indicator into the lowest panel. And just to show that one more time, I'm going to select it with the left click and drag, and drop into my new position. Now, before we move forward, it looks like I do have one quick question here, and I'll just address that. How do you change the background grid so it lines up with the price action? If you want to make any changes to the grid lines, you can right-click on the price axis and go to Properties. And this will allow you to make changes to the different ways that the grid lines are going to show up. So you can set it on a fixed range, and you can set a fixed horizontal grid line amount of points, ticks. It's really just any change to the grid lines can be made from this properties window. And again, That would be by hovering my mouse over the price axis and then right-clicking and selecting properties. That's going to be a different menu than the properties menu that I would see from this context. So just be aware of that. Thank you for that question, Deborah. All right, so now to move forward, we will start working with our drawing objects. So to access the drawing tools within NinjaTrader, we're going to want to use our drawing tools icon on the chart toolbar. That's going to be the second from leftmost icon. It looks like a pencil. Once I left click on that, it's going to open up a new drop-down menu. I can make changes to the snap mode, so where my drawing objects are going to snap to as I'm drawing them. I can choose to stay in draw mode. This is if I'm going to be doing a heavy amount of drawing on the chart. It'll keep my mouse in draw mode. And then this is where I would also access any of my drawing objects. You'll see each of these also has an accompanying hotkey for quick access on the keyboard. Now to draw any of my drawing tools, for instance, if I wanted to draw a line, I would select line. Now you'll see my cursor has changed to appear to be a pencil, and that lets me know that it's ready to draw. I'm then going to want to left click at my starting point and then left click at my end point. There's a pretty wide variety of different drawing tools here, and the use of those drawing tools is going to be up to you, you know, what you're trying to achieve and what you like to do with your charts. But you'll see not only do we have different lines, we have geometric objects that you can add. So if I wanted to add a rectangle, very similar process. I would select rectangle from the menu, left click at my start point, and another left click at my end point. And we also have some Fibonacci objects in here and more advanced drawing objects like trend channels and Andrew's pitchfork. Let me just draw a quick Fibonacci retracement for you guys just to show off the tools a little bit more. And I'm going to actually make my window a little bit bigger. So with the Fibonacci object, I'm just going to select it from the menu, and similarly to these other objects, I'm going to use a click and click method to draw that. So one click at my start point and another click at the end point. And now you'll see I've got my Fibonacci object with these standard levels that like the 23.6 is my first level up to 100% based on the Fibonacci scale there. Now, if I wanted to make any changes to my drawing objects, such as moving them or changes the properties, I can easily move them by just selecting them with the left click and then dragging them into a new position. Make sure that your mouse is this little crosshair. That lets you know that you're moving the drawing object rather than panning around the chart. And if I wanted to make a different change, like to the color or the opacity for this specific object, I can right click with it selected, select properties. And you'll see it's going to open up my drawing objects window where I can make some big changes to the properties, such as the color. If I wanted to change this to maybe an aquamarine, and also change the color of the outline, the opacity. The one property that would be consistent across the board with all of your drawing objects is going to be the attach to property. Currently, it's set to attach to this 1 minute chart, but I could also set it to attach to all of my ES 0321 charts globally. And for the more advanced objects, we're going to have a more expanded amount of properties. So if I wanted to make changes to my Fibonacci retracement, I would select that from my configured menu on the left-hand side. And you'll see there's quite a few more properties here. Some of them are the same, but some of them are a little bit more complex to make changes to, such as the price levels. I would have to scroll down to the bottom, select edit price levels, and in a separate window, this would allow me to add, remove, or edit existing price levels. So for instance, I know some people use negative values on Fibonacci retracements. If I wanted to add negative level, I could just select add, enter in my value. So I'll just add a negative 23.6% and hit OK. Now you'll see that that hasn't applied to my object yet, and that's because I do have to press apply first. But once I do so, now you'll see I have my negative level, negative 23.6 added there. Now to remove drawing objects, there's multiple ways to do it, and they're all fairly simple. If I wanted to remove my line, I can select it with the left click and either hit the delete key on my keyboard or right click and select remove. I can also do that directly from the drawing tools window. So if I right clicked and went to properties, you'll see I have a remove option here. If I'm adding and removing a lot of objects, I might use this window because I have to confirm with that apply button. So it prevents me from maybe accidentally making a mistake if I'm adding and removing a lot of stuff. You'll see once I hit remove, it's still there until I hit apply. So I find that to be useful at times. And lastly, I can remove all drawing objects, and that's going to be from the drawing tools menu, remove all drawing objects. When I select that, it's going to ask me if I'm sure. I'm actually going to select no on this just to keep a couple of drawing objects because we're about to go over window tabs where drawing objects are a little bit relevant. But if I wanted to remove them all, I could select yes. All right, so this next section is we're going to go over using window tabs. Now, window tabs I find to be particularly useful for organizational purposes, and they're actually one of my favorite features of NinjaTrader 8. So a window tab allows me to create numerous tabs nested within the same window. You'll see on my chart, I have a little tab down here at the very bottom on the left-hand side with the name of the instrument. And then there's a plus sign next to it. This is where I'm going to be able to add additional tabs. So if I click this plus sign here, you'll see I have a new data series window where I can input some new information. I'll just enter MNQ 1220. Whoops, I'm stuck on my old expiries there, 0321. Once I've edited these parameters to my preference and hit OK, you'll see now I have a separate tab down here with my new instrument, and I can flip back and forth. I find that this, if I have a lot of charts and a lot of separate windows, I find that using the tab feature helps me a little bit with my screen management and organization. I also enjoy that with multiple tabs, I can quickly flip back and forth by using the Windows command Control Tab on my keyboard. And each time I hit Control Tab, it's going to switch me to the next chart. Now, one particularly useful tool when using window tabs is the duplicate feature. This allows me to duplicate a window completely. So it'll duplicate the indicators, it'll duplicate both data series that I have applied, and most interestingly, it'll duplicate my drawing objects since these are saved to the instrument. So if I wanted to duplicate this window, retain my drawing objects, and then be able to make some changes without affecting this chart, I'm going to take my mouse and hover it over the ES0321 tab. I'm going to right click, and from this right click context menu, I can select duplicate a new tab or duplicate a new window. I'm just going to duplicate in a new tab. Now you'll see I have a second ES0321 chart, and they look identical. Why I find this feature to be particularly useful is that I can analyze several different intervals and be able to keep all of my drawing objects intact without having to open a brand new chart. I can just duplicate, and then I can change my interval using some of the steps that we saw earlier. So if I wanted to change this to a 15-minute interval and maybe remove my VIX index since those ticks don't come in at the same rate. And now you'll see I have my ES0321 15-minute chart, And I've even retained my drawing objects. Now, obviously, these distorted a little bit visually since I drew them on a 1-minute chart and then applied them to a 15-minute chart. But the important part is that they're still there. And just to show that off a little bit more, let me add just a circle. Now, if I were to duplicate this brand new chart, you'll see it's retained all those drawing objects, and I can make changes to the interval while retaining those drawing objects. It saves me a lot of time and effort of having to create new charts and draw brand new drawing objects. I can just duplicate and get moving. Now, once I have several tabs going on here, you'll see that 3 of them are named ES0321. And this may not be ideal for my personal organization. So it's important to be able to rename these tabs so that I can better organize them and know what they are. And to do that, I can right-click on the name of the tab that I'd like to change and then select Rename. This opens up our chart properties window, and we're going to be making changes to the tab name. There are a number of variables that you can use that would automatically fill in. So currently, using the instrument full variable, it's going to put in the name of the instrument. But since I have multiple charts open for the same instrument, I'm going to want to use something different to uniquely identify those charts. So let me remove that variable. I'll then left click this downward pointing arrow. And I can select a variable from this list. I can also just type in a name if I wanted to give it a custom name. But for me, a variable is going to allow me to have a little bit more organization. And I'm just going to choose the period because that's the differentiator between my 3 ES charts is what time period is showing. So once I change that, I'll hit apply and OK. And you'll see now I have a tab that says 1 minute, 2 tabs that say ES 0321, and a tab that says MNQ 0321. Now I'll just change the naming scheme for each of my ES charts and then leave the MNQ chart the way that it is, because that one is identified differently by the instrument name. So again, I'll just hover my mouse over the name of the tab, right click, select rename, remove the current variable and either type in my own custom name or enter in a variable that's going to make the chart immediately identifiable to me at the bottom. Hit apply and OK, and repeat that for my last ES chart. All right, so now I have 4 tabs. One says 1 minute, one says MNQ 0321. I have one that says 15 minute and one that says 30 minute. This is going to help me greatly personally with my organization because now I can differentiate those ES 0321 charts at a glance. And to further organize my charts, I can drag and drop the tabs into different positions. So for instance, if I wanted to get my MNQ tab out of the way and maybe have it at the end after all of my ES charts, I can left click it, hold and drag it into its new position. And now I've got 1 minute, 15 minute, 30 minute, and then my MNQ 0321. And if you ever wanted to separate out any of these into a new window, you can do that. You would just right click over the top of the name of the tab that you want to move to a new window and select move to new window. And now my MNQ chart is alone and by itself, and my ES 0321 chart is separate window. Now the next set of features we're going to dive into is the chart trader. You can place and manage orders directly from your chart using NinjaTrader. We're not going to dive into it too deeply because it is covered in a little bit more depth in our order entry webinar. But I did want to just show it off because it is a feature that's here. It's a very useful feature. And it's, you know, with Charting 101, you want to get a little bit of an idea of each of the features. So to enable NinjaTrader, I'm going to want to choose my NinjaTrader chart toolbar icon. That's going to be the 5th from rightmost. If I left click on it, I've got 3 different options. I have off, which will leave chart trader off. I've got chart trader, and then I've got chart trader hidden. Now the difference between these two is going to be this panel here on the side. If I just select chart trader, I'm going to have my panel with my quick buttons. And if I select hidden, that panel disappears. And I'll show you why it's still in chart trader mode in just a moment. But I did want to briefly go over this chart trader panel a bit. You'll see I have my quick buttons for placing buy and sell orders at the market, ask and bid prices. I have my close button, which will cancel all pending orders and enter a market order to close me out of my position. And then I have the reverse button, which will enter me into the reverse position, very useful for if the market starts moving against me or in a different direction. The lower part of this is my P&L display. This is going to let me know what type of position I'm in, where I entered, and what my profit and loss will be. So just to show that off, I'm just going to place a buy market order to get into a position. Now you'll see I've got a 1 here and it's in green. That means I'm in a long position of 1. Red would be short. It's got my entry point. This would be my average entry point. So if I had multiple entries, it would average those numbers out. But you'll see here it says 12,530, which is where I entered at. And then I've got my P&L displaying down here, my unrealized P&L. Currently it's set to points. If you want to see this in a different unit, you can left click on it to change the parameter type. So you could put it into currency, for instance. You can also do percentages, ticks. It's really up to you what you would prefer to use for that parameter type. And pressing the close button will just close me out of my current position, and you'll see my P&L display goes back to telling me that I'm flat. I won't dive too deeply into these options here on the lower side of the panel, but this would just be where you would select which account you're trading to, what your order quantity is, the time and force of your order or orders, and whether you want to apply an ATM strategy or not. With Chart Trader active, I also have options to place orders from the right-click context menu, and that's where that hidden option is going to become particularly useful. So you'll notice when I right-click on the chart background, I now have a new section that has several different advanced order types. I've got, at this particular price point, sell limit, sell market if touched, buy stop market, or buy stop limit. This is a semi-intelligent list. If I move my mouse below the market and right-click, you'll see I now have different options. The NinjaTrader knows which orders would be valid at that particular price point and is going to try and prevent you from getting order rejections by only showing you the options that would be valid there. Now, the hidden option becomes relevant if I wanted to get rid of this panel and save myself some screen real estate, but still be able to place orders. Then I can still place, by using the hidden option, those advanced order types from the right-click context menu. All right, and that's all we're going to cover for Chart Trader. As I had mentioned, if you're interested in learning more about that feature, you can always open your help guide by using the F1 key, or you can join our order entry webinar, which dives into that in depth. Now, the next set of features we're going to go into is going to be some save features. And the first one we're going to use is the templates. So a chart template is a great way to quickly add a set of settings to a new chart. Saves you a lot of time and work if there are particular bar colors or indicators that you consistently use for numerous charts. This is a great way to just add those with just a couple of clicks. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a chart template. So I'm going to use my ES0321 chart, and I'm going to create a chart template so that these candlestick colors and my indicator are going to be saved. And then I will apply them to my M&Q chart. So to create a chart template, I'm going to right click, go to templates, select save as, And I'll give my template a name. I'll just leave it with its default name, my template. And select save. Now, once I've saved my template, I can apply it to other charts. So to apply it, I'm going to right click on the chart that I'd like to apply it to. Scroll down to go down to templates, select load. And you'll see my template appears here. I'll just select it with the left click and select load. And did you see what happened there? As soon as I applied that template, it changed my bar colors and added my MACD indicator. One thing it did not do was add those drawing objects, and that is because the drawing objects are not saved as part of the template. So just be aware of that when working with templates. Now, the final save feature that I want to go over is the workspaces. This is how I'm going to be able to save this setup, my two chart windows here, for a later point in time. So when I'm done trading for the day, I can shut down the platform. And when I reopen it the next day, I will still have my setup and I won't have to redo everything. So to do that, I'm going to want to go to my control center. From the control center, I'm going to go to the workspaces menu. Now you'll see there's a green window next to a workspace called Untitled currently. That's the workspace that we are working in. And that green indicator just points out that that's the one that's open and active at the moment. Now to save this, we're going to select Save As and give it a new name. I'm just going to call this my workspace and select Save. Now, if we go back to the workspaces menu, you'll see I have my untitled workspace, which is just an untitled default. And then I have my workspace, which is the one that we currently have open. So this becomes really useful when we're done trading for the day, because it allows us to shut down the platform and not have to waste a bunch of time the next day rebuilding everything if we wanted to retain a setup. So to exit the platform, we're always going to want to make sure to do it from the control center and select the X icon on the control center. It'll then prompt you and ask you if you want to save your workspace. Now, it's not always a yes when this prompt comes up. If I had accidentally removed something out of my workspace and then was prompted to save, I would want to select no so that it retains that last save that I had rather than overwriting it with missing information. So just be aware of that. You don't always want to just blindly hit yes here. You want to think about it. Do I want to save these changes? Since I didn't make any changes that I don't want to keep, I'll select yes here. Let me just pull my NinjaTrader 8 icon over. So now that I've shut down the platform, when I'm ready to restart the next day, I'll just open up NinjaTrader. And you'll see that once it opens up, all of the charts that I had just created will open up, and they'll be in that same position that they were in at the time that I saved it. All right, so that concludes the material that I have for today. Let me just get switched back over to the rest of my presentation. All right, so during today's webinar, we covered how to create a chart, working with data series parameters, how to apply indicators to a chart, working with drawing objects, using Windows tabs, order execution using NinjaTrader, and saving your charts as both a template and a workspace. And I did want to open the floor to any Q&A that there may be, so if you have any questions, feel free to put those into the room now. All right, so it looks like I have a question. It seems everyone is using candlesticks. I'm using open, high, low, close bars. Open, high, low, close bars seem more practical because they show the open and close of that bar. What's so special with candlesticks? The open and the close aren't clear and don't seem to exist with candlesticks. Am I missing out on something by not using candlesticks? It's just a matter of preference, Mike. The open, high, low, close do show you those open and close values a little bit more at a glance than a candlestick may. But the candlestick still does show you those values. The candle itself will have the open and close values, and then you'll see the high and the low with the wick. But there's nothing more or less special about either of those bar types. They're just a matter of preference. Thank you for that question. Is there a way to zoom using a window selection and have it fill the entire chart space scaled to the whole window? I'm not sure if I fully understand what you mean there, but the chart will automatically scale. So if I maximize my window, clearly it's not showing me very much info right now, and that's just because I need to add additional days to load. And connect. So let me just get connected here. But so you'll see if I minimize and maximize the window, it's automatically going to kind of scale to accommodate for that extra space. And if you wanted to do any zooming on the chart, then you'll see these zoom in and zoom out icons, which are going to be the third and fourth from leftmost on our chart toolbar. And I can choose an area to zoom into. And then once I'm done, I can select the zoom out. Did that answer your question, Keith? All right, perfect. And I'll give the Q&A just a couple more minutes. I don't see too many more questions coming into the room, but I will give everybody a chance to finish typing if they are currently typing a question. All right, it doesn't look like I have any more questions coming in. I do see someone has their hand raised. So Pete, if you did have a question, go ahead and just type that into the room now. And just a quick reminder for everyone, all of the features that I demonstrated today are available for you to test for free once you download NinjaTrader. So if you've not done so already, you can click the link on the slideshow now to get started with NinjaTrader. Let me just put those links in the room as well. I'll enter a link to download the platform and also a link to where you can get signed up for a free live data trial. Lastly, if you have any lingering questions that weren't answered in the presentation today and you're not able to find those in the help guide, you can always write to platform support at ninjatrader.com to get a hand with those. I wanted to thank you all very much for attending today's webinar event, and happy trading from all of us here at NinjaTrader.